We're told to work hard to become independent and successful in life, but we're also told to give joyfully and not cling to the things we work so hard to get. God reminds us that everything is His. We are entrusted on this earth with time, talent, and treasures. In this podcast, we learn to live as Jesus teaches.
Hey, welcome back to Entrusted by God. This is Pastor Steve Wood of Mount Pisgah Methodist Church. I'm joined by Ray Bachman, Duane Wood, as we continue to learn how to live life God's way. Isn't it a wonderful thing for us to live what Rick Warren called the purpose-driven life, but I kind of like to call it the mission-driven life. And it's the mission of Jesus Christ in terms of making disciples, learning to live life God's way, and building God's kingdom, and then being blessed in that with joy and hope and peace and even provisions. So today we're going to focus a little on the seasonality of what it means as a parent or a grandparent, regardless of where you may live, in terms of looking at the seasons of spending and saving. And this is particularly germane as we approach the back to school time and back to school type of expenses. And then no sooner than we kind of get back in school. And by the way, there's some things that occur today that didn't occur when I was coming through school. Activity fees, program fees, usage fees, and I get all that, but I mean, if you look at a college tuition schedule, the actual tuition, room, board, food, that kind of thing, those are all elements. But then there's like 8 other fees that are tacked onto that. And so it can be equally as taxing for a family who just has a day schooler, because that's very expensive, or even into the lower school grades. So for us to be prepared to do that well and to take care of needs, we concede we can't take care of all the wants, but we'll take care of the needs. Ray, we have to have a plan to be prepared for that, and a lot of that is about saving. And so you got a great passage today for us out of Proverbs, I think, right?
Right. Yeah, if we need to glean wisdom, we need to glean from the ants. This is this is a great verse. This is Proverbs 30:25, and I'll read it in the New King James Version. It says, "The ants are a people not strong, yet they prepare their food in the summer." In other words, even these little creatures store up in season for the next season. And I'm concerned that this young generation is so bound to credit that they think, if we can't afford it, we'll just put it on this plastic card and worry about it later.
Mm-hmm.
And not just younger people, but people of all ages, unfortunately, have looked to credit instead of setting a little bit aside over a period of time to accumulate the funds. And not to get on a rabbit trail, but I think sometimes these families need to say no to some of these activities because they're very costly. You don't want to prohibit your kids from enjoying their lives, but I think no needs to be an answer instead of yes all the time when you're looking at the financial commitments. Now, I'm not saying no to college, but I'm saying maybe no to an expensive college. So again, from this verse, we learned that this ant sets aside little by little by little, knowing what's coming about. And here we are in the month of, I guess we're taping this in July, and school's going to be starting, and a lot of expenses, like you said, Pastor, and then Christmas, which we'll talk about also. There's a lot of big expenses coming up.
Yeah.
And if they're not prepared, there's a tendency to say, I'll just put this on my credit card, or I'll pull more money out of my equity line. And I just don't think that's really trusting God financially. It's really trusting the credit cards. And it's amazing what God does when you put Him in charge of your finances.
Right. I think you bring up several points there, but one of the things that hits me while you're talking is that oftentimes when we kind of get into family mode or beast mode or whatever you want to call it, and you're just trying to get things lined up, get them done, we don't take the time to step back and look at the big picture. And really, Ecclesiastes 3 rings true. There's a time and a season for everything under the sun. Anybody with children knows that there are seasons of spending, so there needs to be seasons of saving. Already mentioned, back to school, you've got clothing, you've got accessories, you've got all kinds of things. And if you're not prepared for that, you're right. You just have to borrow it. Yeah. Now, I don't know where the word leverage came from, but that's a very deceiving word. We're actually borrowing money, whether it be credit card or borrowing from ourselves if we take equity out of a 401k or IRA or something like that. And then you've got the Christmas season. Everybody wants to do well by their family in the Christmas season. So if you think about those two seasons, that's basically July through the end of the year. So it wouldn't take much coaching for someone to realize I got two choices, Duane. The first one is January through June needs to be a season of saving for me, or I need to just reconcile myself that I'm going to be slave to the lender and I'm going to put all this on a credit card in August and then towards Christmas. You were talking earlier about what's happening lately with car loans, for instance. Yeah, that's a very dangerous sign.
Yeah, I read some data here in the last 2 weeks that in the state of Georgia in particular, over 30% of the automobile loans are 30 to 90 days past due.
Wow.
And people in the industry are making preparations for repossessions,
Wow.
let's say. And Georgia's at the top, close to the top of the list, but it's not the top of the list. Other states in the Southeast that are experiencing that. I hear the term leverage, and I meet with young people quite often and, talk about leverage. And leverage can be a tool to be used, but it also needs to be looked at as danger. We've got something going on. There's danger. There's something going on. You're not able to, or you're choosing to pay something through the use of leverage, and that debt will not go away. I don't want to go down that rabbit trail, but just suffice it to say that it is dangerous when you start playing the game, particularly with credit cards, because credit cards, they will allow you to make a minimum payment. And my hard and fast rule as a trained financial counselor is if you cannot pay the full balance in full on a credit card, the first month that you're not able to pay that balance in full, you need to cut that card up.
Duane, what are the interest rates on those these days? Because I've obviously not paid interest on them.
I think the one that I have is like 14.9%, but I've never, in 30 years, I've never paid an interest payment on it. But I'm hearing and reading that they're raising rates on credit cards up into the 24 to 30% range now. 30%.
Wow.
30%. And there is a scale that you can go down of what the most expensive forms of debt are. And, you and I've talked about this before, but credit card is at the bottom. It's unsecured. They're going to charge you the most. It is the worst. It's the most convenient, but it is the worst one to have. Obviously, the best type of debt to use as leverage is purchasing a home. 30-year fixed. There's a lot of advantages to that. But getting back to the families and budgeting, there's another verse in Proverbs that has an ant reference.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Proverbs 6:6. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which having no captain, overseer, or ruler provides her supplies in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest. So again, the same concept of planning these things. We always would ask people to have an emergency fund, and typically that's 3 to 6 months worth of asset or income that's set aside for emergencies. But your children going to school and having to buy school clothes and school supplies is not an emergency. That should be a planned expense that you plan for and you set aside money. And the credit union that we belong to, I love the way they do, but they have one account and they pay you the most money on that account. I get 2% interest. Wow. On this savings account, but it's called rainy day savings. And they want you putting money in there knowing that things like that are planned for. Same thing with Christmas. You know, if you're going to spend $1,000 on Christmas, don't put it on a card and figure out how to pay for it in January. Take $100 a month out of your budget and put it aside. That way you've got the cash to spend. And it all, Pastor, goes back to meet with a family. If you need somebody to do some financial advising for you to understand how to do a budget, contact the church. There's people here that would be happy to work with you and give you some tools. But you have to meet as a family and talk as a family, husband and wife, and even the children would buy into the fact that, hey, if we want to do this, then what are we going to give up, if you will, on the want chart to get something else? And you got to make sure you got all your needs covered. We ask the Lord. The Lord's going to provide. We've talked about this. If we're obedient and we're generous, the Lord's going to meet our needs. He's going to provide. He tells us he will. But sometimes we get ahead of ourselves and want to spend before the Lord actually provides.
Yeah. You know what, Duane, that makes so much sense. And quite frankly, just this week, we had somebody contact us who's now retired and has been a Crown and Dave Ramsey coach. So they're looking for people to try to help. And so just send us an email at mountpisgah.org. You can go on the website. We'll be happy to help you. You know what it boils down to biblically is we got two passages about an ant, but the deeper story is if you ever watch ants, it's not like they're out for an afternoon stroll. When the sun shines, they make hay, so to speak. And they've got pretty sophisticated tunnels. Why? Because they know that it rains 30% of the time. And they won't be out gathering, and they won't be without what's stored up. And they've burrowed the right tunnel in anticipation of the rain, so on and so forth. So Ray said earlier, you know, there is a lot of love in saying no. That kind of wars against the culture. But the reality of the decision before us, I think, is a discerning decision. To your point, Ray, in the family conversation has to be about, okay, we've got bass boat and truck. This is a conversation I had with my son when he started his business. He wanted both. And I said, great. One day, I pray the Lord blesses you with both. But for now, you need to say yes to one and no to the other. So which one are we going to say yes to and then build the plan to make that more than an aspiration? Because you're talking about real money. And so he did that. And now his truck's paid off. And now he's saving for the boat. And by the way, there was some weeping and gnashing of teeth that I would not co-sign a loan with him. I made him save the money to buy the truck outright.
Mm-hmm. Not only budgeting, of course, that's a big topic that we want to emphasize, but also being a good steward of what you're spending your money on, and are you getting the best value? I mean, Vicky, my wife, loves Christmas, but she starts in January just picking up little things all through the year so that come December, we're not overloaded with, oh my goodness, we've got all these presents to purchase. So I think and she'll go to like discount places like the Hope Store, I think is local. She'll find little things for the grandkids at just pennies on the dollar. I just think we can become more creative and a better steward, finding deals. There's a deal out there if you just wait and if you just look for it instead of, there's just some people I know when they see it, they buy it. I mean, they don't. I remember my brother telling me this years ago. He said, before you buy something, at least get 2 or 3 other cost comparisons. And honestly, that's been some of the best truth, that he shared. Because I've found when you look for things and you look at a variety of places, a lot of times you'll find something fairly significantly less for the same thing at a much lower cost. So I know we're talking about budgeting, but also that's an important part of spending is trying to get the best value. I remember, again, going back to Larry Burkett days, he said, before you buy something, ask God to either give it to you or help you find it at a reduced cost. And when you include God in that equation, one of the two happen. It really does.
That's good. When we talk about the yes and no conversations, it doesn't just work in our financial life. It's a trade-off in terms of all of our life. And as it applies to our spiritual life, if we're going to say yes to the Lord, for instance, let's suppose that we want to become more disciplined in our morning devotion quiet time. You got to say yes to 5:30 and no to sleep until, 7 a.m. or whatever the time is. I mean, and life's just full of ordering our life for that way, and then occasionally stepping back and saying, all right, is this really worth it? I mean, if you have cable TV, my guess is you've probably had some thoughts about, is this really worth what I'm paying for this service? But debt's not the answer, because debt is just, it's a deferment of pain with an intensity factor with every escalating month. And so it's not just putting off debt, and it's a deferment of pain and the reminder that, wow, I'm still paying 72 months later, I'm still paying for this car or whatever.
It's true with automobiles, anything that is a depreciating asset that you purchase with debt is a no from a financial perspective. But let me just offer some real practical advice to the young mom out there who's maybe wondering and struggling. It's okay if your child does not have the right emblem on their clothing. You can go to ABC store. I won't name the stores, but you can go to the stores that cost you $100 for a pair of pants, and you can go to school stores that'll cost you $5 for a pair of pants. The other thing is you can find a lot of like-minded moms. Just find someone who's got a child the same sex as yours that's about a year or two older, doesn't have any siblings left over. I've watched one young lady that I am so proud of because she is not afraid to take hand-me-downs from her friends who happen to buy clothes. They spend way too much money on it, and these children look very, very nice, and it's all hand-me-downs.
Yeah. And there's people that want to help. As we close today, let me again point you to the website, www.mountpisgah.org, for a couple of reasons. Number one, if we can help you take a look at your situation, no judgment, no condemnation, just a reality look, and try to help you forward with a plan, we would love to do that. Just let us know. And then the second thing, and this is on the other side of that, if you'd like to be a part of the solution for some of these children who who are facing going back to school with no book bag or supplies or whatever, there is a place on our website that gives you an entire list of what to put in a book bag. You just drop it off here. We give hundreds of book bags away every school year to children who are in earnest need of them, who are beginning school. So, hey, there's a couple of great solutions. The good news is God is leading us. And until next time, we pray God's best blessings over you. Thanks for being with us today. Have a wonderful day.
Join us next time as we continue to learn to live life with open hearts and open hands as followers of Jesus Christ.